And now I will ask for your full attention as it is one of the most celebrated awards in our industry. It is the Melbourne Press Club's Lifetime Achievement Award. And to announce the winner, I welcome to the stage Mr. Mike Sheehan.
Thank you. I'm not sure I need this envelope. The winner of the 2021 Melbourne Press Club Lifetime Achievement Award, and understandably so, is Ms. Caroline Wilson.
Caro is a compelling, inspiring powerhouse.
And I don't think this is a very smart way of going about it.
The Caro that I see as a professional journalist and commentator, I would say is fearless.
A good journalist is somebody who shines light in dark corners.
I am not convinced, as we sit here today, that that is the way Hawthorn are thinking.
A great journalist is the one who finds the dark corners before anybody else does.
The AFL didn't dream up the coaching succession plan. The AFL didn't create the revolving door.
Focused, determined and unstoppable.
Caro and I first met in the RMIT journalism school, day one, class one.
First met Caro 1978 at RMIT in the journalism class. I obviously thought she was very attractive. I had no idea of her background, that she was a Richmond nut, about the family history with the football club. I just knew she was the copy girl or the cadet from the Herald. And I was the copy boy from the Truth newspaper.
I was covering it for The Age in season 1981, I think it was. And at the end of that year, I met at a dinner the then sports editor of the Herald, Ron Reid. And Ron said, what an interesting experiment this has been. How have you enjoyed it? How have you found it? And ended with that parting line, if only I had a woman in my newsroom, I would bring her onto sport and I would do what The Age has done and appoint her as a football writer. And I said, you actually do have someone in your newsroom and her name's Caro Wilson.
I can still remember the early 80s when we were still in the suburban footy and the dressing rooms were just a shower and a big room, really. So they were really just the men's domain. And yet there was this pesky young female journalist who was Ian Wilson, the Richmond president's daughter, Carolyn Wilson, who wanted to come in with the handful of journos post-game to do interviews and stuff. But at the time it was no, this is not a women's area.
And there was a lot of men who thought that women couldn't write about football or even talk about it because they'd never played the game. Well, it's a bit like saying, you can't talk about the Melbourne Cup unless you've ridden the winner or ridden a horse.
And it was really tough. It was sexist, and it was hard, and the hours were not really conducive to your social life.
Well, one of the things about Caro's phone calls, obviously in the more modern era, her name would come up on the phone, and you'd think, uh-oh, be careful.
She says all the time, always make another call. There's no such thing as too many phone calls, and just, I guess, being resilient and really not stopping until deadline is really deadline, and maybe even pushing deadline beyond deadline.
So I'm on the board at the Brisbane Lions a few years ago when there was a discussion at a board meeting, which is supposed to be confidential, that Caro wrote in the paper the following morning. So her listening device is even in the Lions boardroom. She's just amazing.
Well, Caro was living proof that it was possible. She was marching around in this world, making noise in this world that was really almost exclusively the domain of men.
I think we also have to remember with Caro too is that her career has been vast. It hasn't just been in sport.
So she just gradually built up people around her who realised, one, she could write stories, she was very good on radio, and then she adapted to TV as well.
Hello and welcome to the very first Footy Classified. A massive day in football. Drugs are in the news again and plenty of burning issues around tonight as we launch the program. It's good evening, first of all, to the First Lady of Football, Caroline Wilson.
And I think the issue that has haunted your co-host, Gary Lyon, for the past 24 hours goes to the very heart of this new show.
Caro's great power, and it's as strong today as ever, is that she can take you to the heart of a story. She takes you to the heart of a person. She dissects a topic like no one I know or I've ever read or listened to.
There's a very real chance that Adam Goods might have played his last game of football, which is just an utter tragedy.
And she has got strong views. She's dogmatic. If I've got a view and it's different to Caro's, you always know that's going to be maybe interesting radio, because it's very hard to ever convince her of something that she doesn't think first off.
One thing I'll say is that she never really ran with the pack.
So when she goes out and goes out hard with an issue, we at home, we the readers or the viewers or the listeners, know that we're on terra firma with Caro because she's done the hard yards, she's done the research.
And she had some rough years. The Essendon years were pretty tough.
I still think Essendon are in denial.
I'm a fairly mad Essendon supporter, so it was a little bit tense at home at the start in that journey.
Anyone else in any other job in the country would have been sacked last year. Certainly forced to stand down a lot earlier than James Hird was finally by the AFL.
The Essendon drug scandal is an example of Caro really doing the hard yards in terms of research with that story and thinking as a mother as well as a journalist, this is wrong. She felt that very strongly, went in hard, and the rest, as we know, is history.
I think she's most proud of having 3 wonderful children. And that's what I'm most proud of, by the way, too.
It's part of the magic of Caro, actually, is that as well as doing this, as well as perhaps having a really heated conversation, an argument with, say, a CEO or a coach or a player, Caro would at the same time be managing this other life, which is so rich in her life. And so on the one hand, she might be on the phone kind of, having this very, very strong conversation. A minute later, she'd be hanging that up, picking up again and sort of saying, yes, Dale, the sauce is thawing out, Dale, just pop it in the oven, Dale.
A grudging respect and admiration for the way she does her job. I think that's how you would summarise it. There's plenty of people at club level who think don't go anywhere near Carolyn Wilson, she's trouble.
There is no doubt in my mind that a lot of the change that has occurred not only within the AFL but also in journalism is because of, and I use this word quite with intention, trailblazers like Caroline Wilson.
But I think when history's written in maybe 50 years, they'll look back and they'll say this Caroline Wilson, well, she was the one.
Where is she? Isn't she supposed to be up here? Come on, Nance. Can you stand there and not say anything for 5 minutes?
Happily.
40 years on, never a cross word, not even a frown. Okay, in deference to accuracy, there's a little journalistic licence there. We met when Caro was a cadet at the old Afternoon Herald in the early 80s, when I was the paper's chief football writer and, in her words, her mentor. We later became colleagues on the foundation staff at the Sunday Age, great times for both of us. Then we became opponents in print and on radio and television for 20-odd years. Occasionally sparring partners, but I've always been an admirer, sometimes grudgingly, and I've always been a close friend. She burst onto the scene with the confidence and impetuosity of youth at the Herald Sun building in Flinders Street in what I thought was her grunge gear from Chapel Street, which she resists, and morphed into the person who smashed the glass ceiling for women in sports journalism in Melbourne. Her buddy of 40 years, Corrie Perkin, first scratched the ceiling as a football writer at the Age under the direction of Neil Mitchell. But it was Caroline who crashed through when Ron Reid threw her in at the deep end for the Herald in the early 80s. She has since mastered newspapers, radio and television, and now podcasting, and remains the football writer with the greatest respect in an industry every bit as tough as politics. It's superfluous for me to wax lyrical about her achievements as they are universally known and acknowledged. I prefer to talk about our professional relationship. Our friendship is special, but it has been tested several times over the journey when our egos have complicated things. But the friendship endures. The first time we tangled meaningfully with intent was when we worked together at the Sunday Age under Jeff Slattery, a man who honed the skills of many aspiring young journos. We got together on my idea about a forensic examination of food prices at the football. Pretty exciting, isn't it? If pies hadn't have been so expensive, we would have been hurling dozens of them at each other before the story reached the subs. And for you young journos in the room, subs were people who checked the facts of our stories, grammar and spelling. Yeah. That's when I saw how determined, how opinionated, how self-assured, how resolute she was, and how formidable she was going to be. Jana Vint was widely known as the perfume steamroller. Caroline Wilson came off the same assembly line. She is smart, charming, tough and fearless. No phone call, no confrontation is too hard for her. I've often said if I were charged with starting a newspaper in this city, which would be a silly decision commercially, I would have the young Mike Sheehan covering the game inside the fence. False modesty doesn't interest us oldies. And Caroline Wilson covering City Hall and the boardrooms. She is curious, a great conversationalist and a good listener, and she can smell a yarn through the phone. She also has the unique capacity to strip people bare in print and win them back in the off-season. She has her mother's charm and style laced with more than a dash of her father's confidence and grit. That's grit, Octa. She never loses self-belief, never backs down, never wilts, no matter how daunting the opposition, be it Jeff Kennett, Eddie Maguire, Gillon McLaughlin, Andrew Demetriou, Mick Malthouse, Craig Hutchison, James Hird, or Gary Ablett Sr. The reason why Gary Ablett Sr. is in there is because of a little story from 1989. She had written an extensive feature on the life and times of Ablett for the Sunday Age, to be published the day after the grand final. Ablett stars in the grand final with 9 goals in a losing team. Jeff Slattery tells her the story doesn't get published unless she fronts the superstar and asks him about his issues with the law before he took the VFL by storm. I need a drink, sorry, just excuse me.
No, go ahead. Take your time.
She waddles off into the Geelong rooms after the game, heavily pregnant with her first child, and confronts Gary Ablett. He declines to engage on the subject, but bizarrely rubs her belly and offers a blessing for the unborn. No one compartmentalises their life better than Caroline. She's a caring daughter, a devoted wife and devoted mother of 3, a new grandmother, and conscientious in all her various forms of work. Football writer, TV panellist, radio personality, podcaster and bridge player. No wonder she's late for everything outside her media commitments, and I mean literally everything. Just for the record, Brendan is both an accomplished journo and an accommodating husband and deserves lots of credit for the success that Caroline's achieved. Our relationship, and it's purely professional, Brendan, was laid bare when I interviewed her on Open Mic in 2016. The edition she loves to tell people was the highest rating show of the programme's 11-year history. I have great joy in correcting her, advising that the zany Warwick Kappa generated better numbers. Anyway, ours was a fascinating encounter. After pointedly telling me she no longer idolised me, which is quite reasonable as she was in her mid-50s, she berated me for failing to defend her honour after the infamous footy show skit when Sam Newman humiliated her. Her quote was, "I've told you I didn't think you were particularly supportive of me. I felt a bit let down." Cop that. One of the stories that best encapsulates our relationship occurred at the Walkleys 14 years ago. The ABC's Australian Story won for a piece by Peter Wilkins on Sally Robbins, better known as Lay Down Sally. I had been genuinely confident that my double-page interview in the Herald Sun with Simon Goodwin, laying himself bare about his drinking and gambling, would win. Ms. Wilson was equally confident of her entry. As you would expect. Shortly after the result was announced, she came across to my table and said, "At least you didn't win." Now, I feel comfortable telling that story because I was about to say the same thing to her. Tonight she is a clear winner. She continues to inspire women and continues to command the respect of men, as bold, as provocative, as relevant as ever. She has earned the Lifetime Achievement Award, and there's more to come before we can resume our pastime of watching movies together midweek at Sorrento. My warm congratulations, Caroline.
You hold it up together? You don't have to hold it. Thank you so much, Mike. They were beautiful words. And Corrie, and Sam, and Lethal, and Brendan. That was just, wow. This is a wonderful and overwhelming honour. Thank you to the Melbourne Press Club and the committee for thinking of me. It really came as an extraordinarily wonderful surprise, and now an opportunity to thank so many people in my life and my journalistic life who've helped and supported me and been my friend along the way. Thanks again to Mike for those lovely words. As I said when I presented you not so long ago with your Lifetime Achievement Award, you were my inspiration in my 20s, my colleague through most of the 30s, and my most feared rival through the 40s, but always a dear friend despite some testy moments. I've been incredibly fortunate to have worked under some remarkable sports editors, from Ron Reid at the Herald, who, as Corrie said, took me in as an experiment at the end of 1981, thanks to some not-so-gentle prodding from you, Corrie, my trailblazing buddy, to Chloe Salto. After all those sports editors, Chloe, I've finally got a woman sports editor. A wonderful and wise one at that. It means a huge amount to me that both you and Ron are here tonight. In between is some honour roll, notably the brilliant Jeff Slattery, Steve Perkin, Charlie Happel, Gary Linnell, who appointed me in a blaze of controversy, it seemed at the time, as chief footy writer at the end of 1998, Steve Linnell, Alex Lavelle, who provided some much-needed backup during the Essendon drug scandal, and so many more. Ron, it's hard to believe, Ron Reid that is, how different life and journalism was in that first footy season I covered back in 1982. My mother, during COVID, actually unearthed a lot of old documents. One of them was a letter that Ron had written to an aggrieved reader. It was a lovely letter. It was very defensive of me. He'd accused me of giving the reader votes to Footscray and Dunstan because I fancied his nice trimmed beard and that I fancied him. It's just remarkable that you and Mike had to battle to get me to that first footy writers' dinner. A woman had never been welcomed before, and no kidding, I arrived at Princes Park, was taken up to the kitchen and given an apron because they thought I was a member of the catering staff. I'm not kidding. When you look at the battles now between clubs and media and supporters, those days seem like wonderfully simple times in comparison to what we endure today. To quote a past recipient of this award, Laurie Oakes, social media, not your Instagram, Jackie, I love that, is an infection on political journalism, and I reckon it infects the bloodstream of footy journalism and sports journalism as well. Back in the day, when mobile phones didn't exist, we sat in smoke-filled rooms, banging on typewriters, dealing first-hand with coaches and footy bosses and presidents because clubs had no media managers. It's fantastic. 2 reasons, no offence to all the wonderful media managers who are here tonight. There were 2 reasons I wanted to work in sport. 1, because I love football, and 2, because the sports department was a room shut away from the rest of the office at the old Melbourne Herald, where they all seemed to be having a much better time than anyone else in the building. And that's still the case today. Now, more than ever, I think it's appropriate to quote another late great, Trevor Grant, who said when he received an award at the MCC, the front pages carry the worst words, The back pages, the best words. We are so fortunate. To my posse down on table 12, I'm so fortunate to win a Lifetime Achievement Award and have both my parents here tonight. And really most of my entire family, except for my beautiful daughter Rose, who's in Amsterdam with my granddaughter Sunday. My brother and sister, Will and Moggs, have come down from Sydney. For over 30 years, they have provided me with shelter when some of the best stories were breaking and happening up in the harbour city. And they've just been wonderful friends all of my life. My father Ian is here with my stepmother Juliana. Dad was president of Richmond. He oversaw during his time at the club 5 flags, 2 of them as president, and opened to all of us the magical doors of Tigerland. From the moment I gave up year 11 chemistry, saying I wanted to be a journalist and there was no point in doing science, Dad wore Harry Gordon like a cheap suit, trying to ensure that I got a job. There was maybe a little bit of nepotism there. To my mother Julia, thank you for being my greatest audience and for making me aware from my very early days as a 17-year-old copy girl that my job was the most interesting in the world. To our 3 beautiful children, I've mentioned Rose, Ned and Clementine, thank you so much for always being so challenging and interesting and fun, and for putting up with all that deadline stress and competitive stress over the years and not making me feeling too bad for being late sometimes. And to my Gold Quill award-winning beautiful husband Brendan, who I reckon we met properly selling Clarions, the strike newspaper, down at Flinders Street Station. Thank you for your professional support. All those times you helped me with intros, you would be amazed how many intros in The Age were written by Brendan Donahue. Full confession. What a great journey we have had together, combining politics and sport, and off the field as well, and hopefully many, many more. I'd also obviously want to thank my employers, the mighty Age newspaper, who I've been working for the best part of probably, well, since 1989 anyway, 3AW, and I think I was lured there back in 1982 by Ross Stevenson to be a panellist on his show. I just can't believe I'm still there now. And to Channel 9. And Eddie Maguire, I have to say, who dreamed up Footy Classified some 16 years ago. In my part-time life, I also spent some time on Offsiders, a wonderful program on the ABC. That's been going for 17 years. And to think I've got to work with Barry Cassidy and Gerard Whateley and now Kelly Underwood on every 3rd or 4th Sunday, just an enormous privilege. Also, of course, to the wonderful people I've worked with over the years at The Age, and notably the great team who are there at the moment, led by Jake Nile and Greg Baum, Sam McClure. What a great journalist Sam McClure is. Michael Gleeson and Peter Ryan, many, many more. Obviously Tim Lane and at 3AW on field, and Craig Moore off the field, and Footy Classified, as I said, and Craig, and Gary's gone now, but Matthew Lloyd and all the rest of the wonderful team. I don't claim to be the world's greatest mentor, certainly not the mentor that so many people were to me. But I'm so proud, as I think Corrie mentioned and Sam mentioned earlier, to see so many women working in footy now. No more aprons, girls. And also, poignantly, and never has this been so poignant, that people just don't have to put up with the stuff now that I put up with over the years. I will always appreciate the hundreds of people, from close contacts to not so close ones, who continue to take my calls. And to all those youngies in the room, I can assure you the dread still exists when you make the calls, even when you're 61. I last heard this some years ago when my first editor, John Fitzgerald, won the Lifetime Achievement Award. But I reckon this is the best advice I can ever give anyone, and he reminded us of it when he won this award. It's so simple. The best stories are the ones they don't want you to write. Thank you very much. You're a star. Thanks, Jack.
I must say, Caro, on a personal note, you are the reason that I went into journalism. You've inspired me throughout my career. You've smashed the glass ceiling for every woman in sports journalism. And I'm sure every female in this room would like to thank you for what you've done. So thank you, Cara.